Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast, episode 101. My name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And today we're going to switch gears a bit. We've been talking about race relations for a couple days. It really does, Joe, feel like we're in Groundhog's Day right now, because every week there's a story of a law-abiding gun owner defending himself or his property. And like clockwork, the mainstream media makes them out to be the villains in this scenario. And before the truth gets out, the left and the Black Lives Matter and their media allies have already spun up a bunch of lies to vilify these people. So I want to talk about this case going on in St. Louis right now.
They're harmless.
Because it's...
I don't know why you're saying that about BLM. They're harmless.
Oh, yeah, they're so peaceful.
Peaceful.
We're going to play the clip. What happened was a mob of hundreds of people burst through a wrought iron gate onto private property in a gated community and started terrorizing a homeowner. And the homeowners, I wasn't going to use their name, but now the media is using it, so we're just going to do it. Mark and Patricia McCloskey. They're lawyers, so they understand the law. They have this nice $1.15 million Renaissance-styled home right there. Really nice. We'll see it in a second. The mob bursts through the gate, starts advancing on them, so they grab their guns. So we were going to talk about that because the way the mainstream media is describing them is absolutely shameless. We're going to play a few clips from an interview that Mark McCloskey did with a local NBC affiliate, and how the reporter is just trying to get him to confess to breaking the law. But first, I want to play the clip, Joe, so people can get a general feel for what happens if they haven't already seen it. So, Mr. Producer, let's play cut one real quick.
We are now hearing from the man who stood in his front yard pointing a gun as protesters marched through the central West End. This video right now on your screen getting national attention. You see the man and his wife there in the striped shirt out in their yard with weapons as protesters marched by their home, headed to the home of St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson to protest. Mark McCloskey says the protesters smashed through gates on their street, and this is all private property. He also says that he and his family were threatened. Now, we did check the area this morning. You can see the wrought iron gate is now gone. There is a chain link gate up with a pink ribbon on it.
As soon as I said the words private property, it enraged the crowd. There was then a horde of people coming through the broken gate. I mean, the gate was broken in pieces. I've sent you the photographs of it. And there were, I don't know how many people, there was a tremendous number of people, all angry, all shouting, all coming towards us.
Yeah.
So
I probably the second
it's
they
interesting.
Came, sure. Yeah, this is nuts. Here's how we're going to have to deal with them. I'm going to tell you how they have to deal with them. Ready? They need to punch him in the mouth. That really,
well,
that
no,
is
you
how
don't
you
punch them in the mouth.
All right,
so we're going to get to this because those people were armed. The mainstream media is presenting this like those protesters were unarmed. They were peaceful.
You don't understand what I'm saying,
here in a second.
Max. You don't understand what I'm saying.
I know, but no. So what we didn't see in that video is that when the protesters, those same protesters, were out in another place in the city,
right,
an AK-47 was brought out.
Right.
And during that protest, we'll hear in a second, the homeowner recounting what happened. One of the peaceful protesters pulled out a handgun and reloaded the magazine and said, "This is for you. You're next." So while I can agree with the sentiment,
I would have shot him. When I say punch him in the mouth, as soon as he reloaded that gun, I would have put him down. As soon as he did. You've broken into private property. You broke down my gate. Look, the only thing that they're actually going to understand is getting their ass whooped. That's the only thing these people are going to understand. Right now,
and
they want to
under Missouri
everyone.
law.
Right. So I mean, just put them down.
Under Missouri law, they would have been completely within their rights to shoot because under Missouri law, you're allowed to defend yourself, not just defend your life, but also to defend your property.
Right.
And the minute that mob burst through that gate, which we have pictures, we'll show them in a second. The minute the mob burst through that gate and destroyed private property,
Yep.
Even if it's the neighborhood association, even if it's their property, they can no longer claim that this is a peaceful assembly. They can no longer claim that it's unreasonable for the homeowner to fear for their life or fear for their property after they've watched just feet away private property be destroyed. So I want to throw up a map. Let's go to image number 2. This is a map of the area just so that people can understand what exactly happened. So you can see that public access road, that blue line right there, that's a fence. And right where you see that red dotted line, that's where the protesters went. And that's where the gate was. So let's switch over to image number 4. This is a picture of the gate itself. You have a wrought iron gate for traffic, and then you have 2 pedestrian gates. Let's go to image number 3 to zoom in a little bit. You can see right there, private street, no trespassing.
Right.
So it's there. And we saw from that first clip of the local CBS affiliate that wrought iron gate right there has been removed, not out of safety. The mob destroyed it. They destroyed that gate. And we have a pic of them having destroyed the other gate. Let's throw up image number 5. This is what they did to the pedestrian gate that was right next to that that street gate. No, image 5. The pedestrian gate that was right next to the gate where we saw that sign that said no trespassing. Do we have that image?
It's coming up in 1 second.
There we go. So that's the pedestrian gate. So when we hear in a second, we're going to go through the clips where the local reporters trying to claim that these were peaceful protesters. That's what they did. Yeah. They tore down a wrought iron gate, destroyed private property, then started threatening and advancing on these homeowners. So it's a very obvious case of self-defense. And we'll talk a little bit about whether they followed all the rules of gun ownership, which some people are saying that his wife, who he admits has no firearms training, no formal training, whether she could have done things a little bit better. But that aside, this was a self-defense scenario, and under St. Louis law, you're allowed to defend your property with deadly force, just like you're allowed to defend yourself or your family members. So to see the mainstream media, and let's just throw the image that's going around. Let's go to image 1. This is the image that's being thrown around, floated, showing them, making them look like radicals or something. You can see the Mark McCloskey there with his finger off the trigger. His wife, Patricia, doesn't have the training. She was there just to support him, and she did kind of put her finger on the trigger. But because this is a self-defense scenario, those rules aren't really there, right? Joe, you've taken courses. You know that the basic rules are don't point a gun at anything you're not willing to destroy, and don't put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to fire. In this scenario where there's hundreds of people massing at their property line, right? She's pointing the gun at things that she is willing to destroy if they take one more step, right? And she is ready to fire because they're only feet away. If she didn't have her finger on the trigger, she might not have time to react if they were to all of a sudden rush her. So I think it's a little unfair, the grief that she's getting. But what do you think about this generally, this whole story?
I think they operated with an amazing amount of restraint. And I'm not sure I would have been able to have as much restraint. And by the way, our Democrat leadership is starting a war that they can't finish, and they have no idea what's going to happen. But I'm going to tell you where this is going. These two operated with restraint. The second that person pulled out a handgun and loaded the mag into the handgun, I would have shot him.
They had every right to shoot him down.
Because at that point, you're a threat to me. You're a threat to my family. I'm going to put you down. And look, I know that shooting another human being will change your life forever. It will change who you are. It'll change everything about you. But if we don't get to the place where we restore law and order, this country is going to look like Venezuela, and we'll have let it happen. We let weak leaders into our country, right, that lead from the outside. So a lot of our leadership, by the way, that is on the Democrat side, they are promoting this lawlessness. They are promoting this. The media is doing the same thing. The technology firms like Facebook and Google and those, they're actually weaponizing technology in order to say that, hey, this is hate speech, while things like this happen, and they promote an ideology or they promote a narrative that frankly is garbage. Like the second that you walk on my property with a gun, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you down. I have kids. I got a wife. It's not going to end well for you. And I think that in this scenario, we have to, and of course the left is acting like a bunch of loon bags like they are. And frankly, they're going to get people killed because they think that they can just walk around lawlessly and people are going to get away from it. Now, Max, you did know that most of the states now, the police captains and the police sheriffs and everyone else have now told their police forces, after being told by governors and mayors to stand down, have told their police forces, we're not standing down. I don't care what the mayor says. I don't care what the governor says. They can stick it. We're here to protect our community. So it happened in Virginia. It happened in Oklahoma. It happened in a bunch of different places where they're saying, you want to come here lawlessly? We're going to take care of business. We're going to restore law and order. So it's already happening. The shift is happening. The public sentiment is happening. And we're going to run these people out of their respective areas, and they can all have each other.
I threw up a poll on our Facebook stream. Was this a peaceful protest? And amazingly, first time we've ever had this happen in one of our polls, 100% of the people watching said no, that this was not peaceful,
right.
Because I'll reopen it. Maybe we missed someone out there who thinks it's peaceful to tear down a wrought iron gate. But it's important that as you're watching this, to make sure that you like this video, make sure you leave a comment, and make sure you hit the share button. Because the narrative going around is that these people are far right radicals. Actually, the reporting I've seen is that their lawyers, Mark McCluskey, apparently handled a police brutality case, and they identify as Democrats. Now, that might just be a meme that's going around. I don't know how true that is, but that's the reporting I'm seeing.
They are Democrats.
So they're presenting them as radical right-leaning, like conservatives, but these people were just sitting down for dinner when a violent mob burst into their gated community. So make sure you share this, because the narrative going around Facebook is that these people were the ones doing the wrong thing. And amazingly, I mean, just like that case we saw in New Mexico, the local district attorney is now investigating the homeowners for potentially illegally brandishing a weapon. That's how crazy this has gotten. And that's what I mean, that a lie can get around the world before the truth even has a chance to put on its boots. The left makes the narrative, sets the narrative, and they open up investigations before we're even able to see the whole thing. Right. So it's shameful. But I've also read that there's other departments, local departments, that are investigating the protesters, the mob, for potentially committing, I think it's level 4 intimidation, a felony, basically, intimidating them with a weapon, the guy who had the handgun. So we'll see, but it's important that you share this because we're going to go into depth, and we're going to show you a local interview with the NBC local affiliate and how one-sided that interviewer's questions were, and how Mark McCluskey didn't take the bait, which he's a lawyer. He's not going to admit to anything, even if it was true. So we're going to show you that, but make sure you hit the share button. So I want to jump, Joe, to the first part of that interview, where Mark talks about.
Interview. It's
a
good interview.
He keeps getting peppered with loaded questions, BS questions, taking the protester side, and he just sidesteps every one of them. And he's a lawyer. He's a professional. He knows how to sidestep loaded questions like that. But I want to listen to this one first, because he's explaining, he was sitting down for dinner, and he's explaining what went through his head and why he felt justified to have to grab his gun. So let's play cut 2.
We were preparing dinner. We went out to the east patio, the open porch that faces Kings Highway on one side and Portland Place Drive on the south. And we're sitting down for dinner. We heard all this stuff going on down in Maryland Plaza, and then the mob started to move up Kings Highway. When it got parallel with the Kings Highway gate on Portland Place, somebody forced the gate, and I stood up and announced that this is private property, go back. I can't remember in detail anymore. I went inside, I got a rifle, and because as soon as I said this is private property, those words enraged the crowd, and absolute horde came through the now smashed down gate, coming right at the house. I mean, my east patio was 40 feet from Portland Place Drive, and these people were right up in my face, scared to death. And then I stood out there. The only thing we said is, this is private property, go back, private property, leave now. At that point, everybody got enraged. There were people wearing body armor. One person pulled out some loaded pistol magazines and clicked them together and said, "You were next." We're threatened with our lives, threatened with a house being burned down, my office building being burned down, even our dog's life being threatened. It was about as bad as it can get. I mean, and there was, I really thought it was storming the Bastille, that we would be dead and the house would be burned, and there was nothing we could do about it. It was a huge and frightening crowd, and they broke in the gate and were coming at us.
So he mentions, Joe, that it felt like they were storming the Bastille.
Yeah. Which
is how the French Revolution started, where they literally went and just killed all the rich.
Right.
And we saw the picture of his house, a very nice house, very, very, he and his wife do well for themselves, a very nice, very beautiful looking home. And right there off the road, it's he's explaining, he's laying out the perfect case for how he was well within his rights to do that.
It's going to take violent acts in order to get these guys to understand that there are consequences to bad behavior. We are not in Venezuela. We are not in, Eastern Europe. We are not in the Middle East. We are not in Africa. You don't get to act like this in the United States. You just don't. So if you think you do, and you think you want to, just understand that sooner or later people are going to stand up, and when they do, because they've worked their entire lives for what they have. The same way the government came after people's businesses and didn't care about them and shut down businesses and said, hey, look, we know that 3-4% of the population is immune suppressed or has comorbidity issues or is advanced in age. We know that that's the case, right? But instead of actually putting those people at home, we're going to tell everyone they have to stay home because we're going to cater to that 3 or 4%. The same way that they did that to take away our constitutional rights, these clowns and these looters and these rioters, they're doing the same thing. And they're standing behind Black Lives Matter. Do you see, Max, how it's actually, it's evolved, that the conversation's evolved? It started with Black Lives Matter, police brutality. Now it's not police brutality anymore. Has nothing to do with police brutality. Now it's, we just want everything that you have, and you better change everything. Give us money, and give us food, and give us, give. This has nothing to do with changing.
Yeah. Instead of Black Lives Matter, it's transformed into eat the rich.
Yeah. Eat the rich. Go ahead.
That's what it's basically transformed in.
I
want to throw this.
I grew up poor.
Go ahead.
I grew up poor. No silver spoon. Everything that I have has been, I've worked my tail off for. Everything. I've had people steal it from me. I've had people steal lots from me, right? But I earned all of the things that I have myself. I have been able to accomplish quite a bit by myself, right? No outside family passing stuff down to me. That never happened. So you want to come for what I have? You want to say that you deserve it? Come on. Come through the front door, come through the back door, come through the side door. I don't care what door you come through, but you come at me and try to take what I have, you'll be leaving in a bag. And I'm sorry, that's how most Americans feel. That's how most Americans feel.
So as we get to the next clip from this loaded interview, I want to throw up again, Mr. Producer, image number 5. Just to remind you of what the broken gate looked like. That is what the gate looked like after the mob burst through it. So this next clip is that local NBC.
They didn't have to. They didn't have to tear it down.
They probably didn't have to tear it down, but it was locked, so they did burst through it. This next clip is the NBC affiliate trying to insinuate that the gate was already broken and it wasn't the protesters who did it. Let's go to cut 3.
There have been some reports on Twitter and people who say they were there that says they're saying the gate was already broken.
Yeah, that is nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. The gate was not broken. The gate was broken physically in half. Our trustees on Portland Place came out later in the night and chained it all up with an automotive tow chain, it looks like. But no, you can talk to the trustees in Portland Place that the gate was not broken in half and laying on the ground 1 second before they came in to storm the place.
It was a wrought iron.
Just think of that.
It was a wrought iron gate.
Like, oh, we didn't just bend this wrought iron gate in half. It was like that when we found it. That's what they're claiming. Like, oh no, it was still peaceful. It was like that when we found it. This pristine neighborhood with nicely manicured lawns and a nice private drive. Like, oh no, we found it that way. It had just been ransacked and bent in half already. but the fact that she even asked that question, it gets worse in the questions that she actually gives him. They get worse. They get more one-sided. But it just blows my mind. Saying, oh no, well, because the way that it's legal for him to do this is to say that they damaged private property, right? That's the argument that makes that show of force legal, because there was obviously not a peaceful protest. For her to basically parrot those BS talking points that it was broken when they found it. I mean, that's childish. You expect to hear that out of a kindergartner, not an actual journalist.
I think that we are facing unprecedented times right now, unprecedented times, and we are allowing illogical to become logical. Here's what I think was happening, Max. We're actually making South Park reality. We're making episodes of South Park our real life, like it's happening. Like Kenny would be totally disappointed in our behavior right now.
No, Kenny would already be dead in this episode.
Which one?
Kenny dies in every episode.
Every episode, yeah. But I'm just saying, but Kenny would be literally, he would live in this episode because it's the opposite of what really should happen or does happen.
So I want to play this next part of the clip because the interviewer keeps going and keeps parroting the protester talking points, that this wasn't really private. This wasn't really a private driveway, that this was actually a public road, and that for somehow these well-established brick gates and wrought iron gates had just been allowed to block a public drive for all these decades. No one stopped it, but it's actually public.
Who said
so I want to play that because
I didn't see that one.
That's what the protesters are claiming, that this wasn't private property. It was actually a public a public drive, and that those gates were illegal. That's the argument that the protesters are making. I mean, as if they knew that when they saw the private property sign and burst through anyway. But the reporter in this interview, in this affiliate interview, parrots those talking points. I want to play that now. Let's go to cut 4.
Were the protesters on your private property at any point?
Everything inside the Portland Place gate is private property. There's nothing public in Portland Place. Being inside that gate is like being in my living room. There is no public anything in Portland Place. It is all private property. And you got to appreciate that if there are 200 or 300 people, I don't know how many there were, we were told that 500 people showed up at the Lyda Cruzen's house, which is not on our street, as you know. But how many of them came through Portland Place, I don't know. But it was a big crowd, and they were aggressive, wearing body armor, and screaming at us and threatening to harm us, and how they were going to be living in our house after they killed us.
So she's basically asking, like, are you sure, were they ever really on your property? Insinuating that they had never gone onto private property, they had never trespassed, which is, it's disgusting. Like, I'm so disappointed. I don't even know this woman, and I'm disappointed in this interview because she's basically just spreading the lies that we've been talking about, that these were peaceful protesters on public property, and if not for these angry white people waving around their guns, this all would have been just a happy day. When, as I mentioned, just prior to them ransacking this gated community, an AK-47 made an appearance at their earlier protest. So it's just, Joe, when's it going to give? Something has to give, because I'm really getting tired. Thank goodness that these people didn't actually open fire, because they probably would have been lynched. And they would have been well within their rights to do it, but they probably would have gotten lynched. They probably would have had their house burned to the ground.
Well, everyone's going to think that I'm being extreme right now, but first of all, don't go into a fight like that with a lot of people with one mag, number one, right? You're going to run out of ammo. So make sure that you have more than one mag. And I'm telling people that are out there right now that are listening, if you do not own a gun, you need to go buy one. If you have 100 rounds, you need to go buy 900 more. If you have 900 rounds, or you have 1,000 rounds, you need to go buy another 1,000 rounds.
Just buy them in bulk. Buy a couple thousand. You're going to need 1,000 to train anyway.
Right.
Buy them in bulk, you get a better deal for it.
But don't
I just
be
don't
left
know
out in the cold and have them pull this thing that they pulled before in some states where they shut off the ability to buy a gun, they shut off the ability to buy ammo. You're going to need ammo, you're going to need a gun. Because if this is any indication of leadership justifying the behavior of looters and rioters and criminals, these people are criminals, right? The second that you actually flash a gun, and I'm just telling you what's going to happen in the future. These two people did not look like they were well trained. Even he didn't look like he held the gun with any sort of authority and understood what he was actually holding. I'm going to tell you right now that you need to get training, you need to buy a gun, and you need to be prepared for the worst, right? I mean, this is, and the worst, unfortunately, right now is not a foreign threat. The worst is a domestic terroristic threat, and it's you know, this just proves to you that they're out for blood. They just want to take from us what we've worked all of our lives to accumulate, and that's got to stop.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, Mr. Producer. Let's throw up image number 1 again. From looking at this image of them both holding their guns, it is clear to me that he has training. It's clear to me that he has training. Look at his left pointer. Well, I don't know if that's his left hand or if he's lefty, but look at the pointer finger completely outstretched and not anywhere near the trigger. Like, you don't learn to do that without receiving at least some training. Now, his wife, as we mentioned, it's clear to me that she doesn't have training, and he admits that in a clip we're about to play, that she doesn't have any training. But that's what people in these Black Lives Matter protests need to understand. When they burst into a gated community and they start going after people, they're not just going to be met with people who have a bunch of training. They're going to be met with people who are terrified, have no training, but know that they're well within their rights to shoot. And again, thank God that no one was actually killed that day. It's always a good day when everyone's able to go home alive, even if there is lawlessness like that. But eventually, these mobs are going to come up to someone who's going to be just as terrified as that woman, with just as little training as that woman, and she's going to pull the trigger. He's going to pull the trigger, and he's going to be within his rights to do it. He's going to be fully within his rights to do it, because every single one of these cases where we've dealt with self-defense issues related to these protests, in every single one we're talking about, right? Whether it's the Atlanta cop, whether it's what happened in New Mexico, whether it was the business owner in the Chaz, in every one of these instances, people are well within their rights to shoot these protesters dead the minute they cross their threshold, the minute that they threaten them with deadly force or with bodily harm or with property damage. They're within their rights to fire. And these mobs are too stupid to realize that, or they're playing the most dangerous game of chicken I've ever seen in my life, hoping that no one's actually going to shoot them dead. At some point, something's going to give. Right. And I just pray that these protests dissipate before people actually start getting shot, right? Because right now, the only people getting shot are getting shot by other leftists, right? At these protests. There was just one the other day where the protesters kicked this leftist out because he was too radical for them. He came back with a gun and shot them, right? There's going to be a point, though, where these people are going to cross a line that they're going to wish that they didn't. And no one wants it to get to that point. We all want to de-escalate this.
Do you know what the Washington Post said?
When that happens...
Do you know what the Washington Post said?
Sure, go for it.
The Washington Post says that St. Louis couple points gun at peaceful protesters.
Yeah. That's
what the Washington Post says. These are not peaceful protesters. And you know what, Max? I've had enough. And more I keep telling you that, you know, we're prepared. Like our offices are well armed, right? We take extraordinary precautions to make sure that the people here are safe. We tell people when they go home, because some of them live within areas that are close to these areas in downtown Denver, which are disgusting. I happened to go there last night. Disgusting. Trash in piles, feces on the street. This is right outside the Capitol building in Denver, and they do nothing about it. They act like, this is okay, right? I mean, it's disgusting, right?
Yeah.
But I'm telling all of our listeners that we have to stop the madness when it comes to the media. We have to stop the madness when it comes to these apologists that are literally doing everything they can to tear at the fiber of America. These media companies do not want you to be successful. They do not want you to have peace and prosperity. They do not want you to have liberty. They want to destroy everything you stand for. Yeah. And a lot of them come from other countries. They're here as writers. They're here as journalists, and they came here to infiltrate what we do as a country. And they've infiltrated every part of our media, and they've infiltrated every part of our technology companies. And we are dealing right now with an infiltration of the United States where they want to literally take away everything that we stand for. They want to weaken who we are because they are jealous of what we are. They have envy for what we are as a country. They have envy at the fact that we are courageous people. And they want to basically wrap you in bubble wrap, tell everything that everyone's dangerous and everything's bad. And they are convincing you and conditioning you to not stand up for yourself, to think that this is okay. They are using mob mentality in order to scare you, intimidate you, and put you in a place where you can be controlled. And if you can't see it, I can't help you. But if you can see it, man, you better start standing up. The next time somebody breaks into a neighborhood like this, there's going to be bloodshed, Max. And he's not going to show up with semi-good training and one magazine. The guy's going to have a belt on of 8, 9, 10 magazines, right? And I don't care if you come through with 100 people. This guy said, look, he thought that they were coming for him. They thought that they were going to burn his house down and take it, and kill him and his wife.
And live in it, right? And live in it once he's dead.
And live in his home once he's dead, right?
Yeah,
I mean, these are things that they said to him outside his property. I know right now that if you came to my neighborhood and you even acted this way in my neighborhood, first of all we'd have to do is pick up the phone and call the other 89 neighbors that are in my neighborhood, and I promise you it'd be lights out. Right? Because no one's going to let people come in there and terrorize the neighborhood. They're just not going to let it happen. The next time this happens, Max, someone's going to try the wrong neighborhood. They're going to knock at the wrong door. They're going to piss off the wrong person. And there's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 people dead. And it's all going to be justified. All of it's going to be justified.
Yeah. It's regrettable, tragic, but legally justified. I want to play this next clip because this is where the local NBC reporter basically tries to shame him for the way he and his wife looked, and basically tries to shame his wife. He doesn't take the bait. He explains that she didn't have any training. Let's go to cut 5.
You've received death threats?
Oh, God, yes. The death threat started within minutes. I mean, I don't know how long this whole event started, but I'll bet we got our first email death threat before the mob moved down Portland Place.
When you see the images online of you and your wife on the patio armed now, after the fact, what do you think?
Well, we were obviously upset. My wife doesn't know anything about guns, but she knows about being scared. And she grabbed a pistol, and I had a rifle. And I was very careful. I didn't point the rifle at anybody. The only thing that stopped the crowd from approaching the house was when I had that rifle and I was holding. It's the only thing that stemmed the tide. I can't blame my wife for being terrified and for doing what she could to protect what she thought was her life. It was a horrible.
So that's the important thing here. His wife was in fear for her life. She doesn't need to have training to defend herself.
Right.
And the people trying to Monday morning quarterback this and say, oh, well, her finger should have been off the trigger and she shouldn't have been sweeping the muzzle. Yeah, at a shooting range where you're shooting paper targets, absolutely true.
Right.
But when she's staring down an angry mob and they're feet away from her, threatening to kill her, threatening to burn down her house, threatening to kill her dog, right? Those rules, and we can throw them up. I think we actually have an image. Let's go to image number 6. The image, we actually have the 4 rules of gun safety. Treat every gun as if it's loaded. Never point a firearm at anyone or anything you're not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off the boom switch until you're ready to fire, and know your target and what's behind it. Right. The argument that you're hearing from these Monday morning quarterbacks is that she broke rule 2 and 3. She had her finger on the trigger and she was pointing it at things she wasn't willing to destroy. No. She was ready to fire. They were feet away, threatening to kill her. She had every right to have her finger on the trigger, and she didn't point it at anyone that she wouldn't have had the legal right to shoot in that moment.
Did you notice that the people that were taking the video selectively turned in videos and didn't turn in others? So I've seen some other videos that have made it onto like Live Leak that showed the story that they were talking about, that, hey, we're going to kill you. We're gonna live in your home.
They edit it.
Yeah, totally edited. And by the way, they had them, like the news sources had the unedited versions. They made the edited versions look as if that these people that were standing up there protecting their home should be shamed. They had it, Max. I mean, the media companies, they actually had the footage that showed these terrorizing mobs. There's even a video of the guy actually loading the mag into the gun saying he's coming for them next. There's a video of that.
Yeah.
The news source, right? Local news source, CNN had it, MSNBC had it, ABC, NBC, they all had it.
Well, listen, in the age of the internet, anyone can have it if they actually look like closely enough, right? It's not always just that they ignore sources that they have. It's also that they stop looking for the truth, right? It's that they have what they need to perpetuate their narrative. There's no need to look any further. There's no need to look for any other vantage points. This verifies my truth. You always hear that from the left. My truth. Speak my truth. Well, no, that's a BS. That's BS. There's truth and there's fiction. It's truth or it's false. There's no my truth. There's nothing that can be true for you but not true for someone else. It's either true or it isn't. But the media, they don't actually investigate to find out what happened. They have the headline written, white couple points guns at black protesters. That actually ran in outlets. Versions of that headline. White couple points guns at black protesters. That's what editorial boards actually ran in their papers. That's the story they want to tell, and they figure out how to get there. And if there's anything in between that pulls that narrative apart, they ignore it or they discount it. I want to play this last part of the interview because this is probably the funniest part of the whole thing, where the local NBC affiliate suggests that the protesters were actually peaceful. Let's go to cut 6.
On that note, what is your message to people today? What is your message to people who said they were on Portland Place peacefully protesting and that you incited?
What were they protesting? I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead and finish that. Sorry.
What today? Do you have any message for the people who are saying they were peacefully protesting on your street?
Okay. First of all, why are they protesting on Portland Place? So the mayor doesn't live there. Hang on, my cell phone's going on. The mayor doesn't live there. And when they kick in the gate, when the first thing they do is destroy private property and they storm in angry and shouting and threatening, this isn't a protest. It's a revolution. It's an attempt to inflict terror. That's the definition of terror.
100%.
Is to use force and violence to terrorize a population. And that's what happened to me last night.
100%.
So
100%.
She's calling them peaceful after we everything he's talked about, that they threatened to kill him, his dog, his wife, burn down his house, ransack his house, right? This reporter has seen the images of the gate that was destroyed. For her to even at the end still be pushing this narrative that these are peaceful protesters, it's just such propaganda. It's no matter what he said, they were going to end that interview by saying, "Oh, they were peaceful protesters," and you antagonize them. It's a complete fiction. It's a complete lie, and it shows how dangerous the mainstream media has become. That they can actually twist the facts so much to present something in a different lens to make people who are actually the heroes in this story out to be the villains. I mean, this guy is a lawyer. He had to go and board up his law firm's offices because they were getting threats that they were going to ransack the offices. And to say that these are peaceful protesters, it's so beyond the pale that I can't even believe that these people think they can get away with this.
I actually don't think they should get away with it, but they're not even looking at them. They're not even looking at them, Max. I mean, they're starting a quote unquote investigation. That's the problem. Start locking them up. Start locking them up by the hundreds. Locking them up. They have videos of them all over the country. Just start locking them up. Lock them up. Lock up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700. Send them to prison. See what happens. I mean, you're a tough guy. You get to terrorize people in groups. Let's see how that works out for you when you go to prison. And you do 10 years. And you get out, by the way, after 10 years. And then you get to really see what violence and violent felons and criminals look like. Go do that. You got it all figured out. You're a tough guy, right? But if you do it in these neighborhoods, you're going to end up losing your life. Max, we are headed toward, he is not wrong. This is a revolution. This is terroristic. This is terrorism. This is the example of terrorism. And unfortunately, we have weak, lawless, and pathetic leadership in this country. And sadly, even in our state, in Colorado. I mean, they are terrible people. They let them deface our state capital, right? This thousands of people does not speak for the 6 million people in our state. They don't. They don't speak for a million people in our state. But they let them do it anyway because it's political jockeying. We're talking about a election year. And as soon as January comes around, they either get or don't get what they want. They're going to either continue the lawlessness, right? Or they're going to get what they want, and then they're going to stop allowing the lawlessness, and they're going to do exactly what they do in these Democrat-run cities, and they're going to go back to brutality. And they're going to brutalize them. He said, hey, you got things across the finish line for us. Thank you. We appreciate that. Now we're going to throw you in jail. We're going to beat you. We're going to go back to what should be our quote-unquote norm as Democrats. Because Democrats don't care about black people. They don't care about black people. I mean, Max, I'm gonna venture off for a second.
Well, don't venture too far.
I'm going to venture just off a little bit, just off the reservation, just a couple little bits, right?
Well, that's a very racist statement you just made.
What, reservation?
Yeah, I'm part Native American. How dare you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hurt your feelings?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Hang on every word. All right. So I don't know if you know who this person is, but I'm gonna say a name, and you tell me if you actually know who he is. Ready? Mark Pincus.
Nope, don't know
who he is. So Mark Pincus is a. Have you heard of the Zynga? The gaming that you have, like the Zynga games that you have on Facebook and things like that. He's a billionaire.
Zynga. Yeah.
All right. So Mark actually is the billionaire who is a financier of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Pictures of her widely distributed. You obviously know who Weinstein is, right?
Yeah, I know who Weinstein is. Joe, you're losing the comment section. No. Sherry writes in, "Don't digress too far, Joe, you racist."
That's not Sherry. Stop.
No, it's because you said off the reservation.
I'm going off the reservation for a minute. What I'm trying to show you is that the left coddles, encourages, allows pedophiles, rapists, and racists, closet racists, to infiltrate their environment while they yell, look at them over there, look at them over there, right? And the same thing is happening right now. They are literally doing this. Look at them over there. We're good people. Biden, stay in your basement. Please don't talk. Don't do anything. Don't talk, right? We can win this if you don't talk, and we actually confuse and create chaos inside of our society. Biden, don't talk. Look over there. Look over there. Well, this is who they are. This is the ethos of the Democratic Party, the absolute evil of it. That Mark Pincus guy now is going to prison for a long time for having a pedophilia ring. Now, who do you think billionaire financiers of the Democrat Party hang out with? Other Democrats in the Democrat Party. They're not
all of a sudden hanging out with conservatives.
Soros is paying people to protest. Soros, if you go to georgesoros.com, I am not kidding. If you go to his website, he talks about legalizing sex trafficking. He literally, that's his plight on his own website. I'm not making it up. George Soros, if you go to it, has a display on in New York City that literally is a tribute to prostitution. And he talks about why this should be globally allowed, and that sex workers are workers too, and that it doesn't actually promote child endangerment, and it doesn't actually traffic and hurt women. He literally says it, and he's a financier for the Democratic Party. Weinstein for decades terrorized women in Hollywood while he gave money to Democrats and their candidates. He controlled them with money. I can go down the line. Weiner, Epstein did not kill himself. I mean, I could go all the way through the line, and you could see billions of dollars being given to these people so that they can protect their pedophilia, protect the rapists, protect closet racists like Northam, who's the Democrat governor of Virginia, blackface or Ku Klux Klan uniform, you tell me. I mean, I'm amazed that people have not woken up and actually seen it. And we're looking at lawlessness now that is actually being created by the Democratic Party. You can say whatever you want.
It's the same thing. It's the same. It's always the same story. Just to get us back on the topic, it's always the same story that Democrats are call conservatives violent when they're protesting peacefully, but it's all projection. What we're talking about is all projection. Where they're basically doing what they do and trying to imprint that on their opponents. So conservatives are the racists, when Democrats are the party of the KKK. Right? They call conservatives racist, but they're the part of the KKK.
But they came out
They call
with an
conservatives
article.
dangerous. They call conservatives dangerous, but they're the party of these Black Lives Matter mobs that are burning down cities, ransacking neighborhoods.
Right.
It's all over. I mean,
killing a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old kid in the Chaz for driving down the street in a Jeep. Did you see that? Did you see what happened in the Chaz?
Yeah.
And then the guy's firing into the car is saying, "You're not dead yet." That actually happened.
The father is now calling on Trump to bring in the military because it's complete lawlessness, right? These two homeowners were outside protecting their home, protecting their lives against people threatening to kill them. And the left has twisted it to project the violence of that mob onto those homeowners. Oh no, they're the problem. The district attorney or the circuit attorney, whatever, the circuit prosecutor in St. Louis is investigating the homeowners.
Yeah.
For breaking the law. When you had hundreds of people threatening to kill them, racking a loaded gun, reloading a gun right in front of them, saying, "You're next," threatening to burn down their house. And the prosecutor is investigating the hoax because the muzzle might have swept someone accidentally. This is bizarro world. It's bizarro world. This is not real life. They can't operate in the realm of facts. They have to make things up to make their argument stick. They cannot win if they present an argument based on facts. That's why, as we mentioned, the left always talks about my truth. Like, oh, well, that might be the way things actually are, but let me speak my truth. Anytime you hear someone say that, shut them down immediately, because what's about to follow is pure propaganda. It's not going to be facts. It's not going to be truth, right? There's no such thing as my truth. Either it's true or it's not. And if they have to preface it by saying it's my truth, then they're about to lie to you. And they're trying to package it up in that form.
They're about to lie to you again. They're about to lie to you again because they keep lying. Everything is a lie, Max. They just keep lying. They don't tell the truth about anything. They don't.
Yeah, I mean, just look at that Stephen Baca story that we covered in New Mexico, where the guy was being chased by an angry mob, hitting him with skateboards and hitting him and beating on him, taking him to the ground. He only shot and fired in defense of his life once he was being brought to the ground by 3 or 4 people. The governor actually came out, condemned him, and called on him to be prosecuted. And now those charges have been dropped. But the lie that he was there shooting random protesters was able to circle the whole world. It was able to trend on Twitter for a whole day before the truth actually came out, right? And people are saying, "Oh, well, they didn't know better. They didn't know better." It's not slander. They didn't know better. They knew better. These people know better. You look at the Covington Catholic kids at the Supreme Court. Anyone who watched that video know that they did nothing to antagonize that man. And yet all the major left-wing news agencies, organizations, plastered that these were racist kids laughing at a Native American. They're deliberately lying. The media is not, it's not ignorance, right? This is manipulative. They know that we have 125 days between now and the election, and that's only, 20 more news cycles? Between 16 and 20 news cycles left between now and the election. Every day they're going to be pushing a story designed to get Trump removed from office.
Right.
And the reason that this was amplified to that level is Trump retweeted the video of the homeowners protecting themselves. They saw the power of him retweeting that video, and they had to shape the narrative that they were actually the bad guys. That Trump retweets video of racist white couple pointing guns at black peaceful protesters. That's the narrative they're pushing.
100%.
It's not a mistake. It's not accidental. It is slander. It is defamation. They're doing this on purpose because they know that if Donald Trump wins, they will never recover. The only chance they have to grasp on to what little power they have left is to defeat Donald Trump. Because if he gets a second term, these people are finished and they know it.
And it looks like he's still going to get the second. I mean, look, they're doing everything, and people that are staying silent. It's one thing I could say about people who support Trump and support this movement is that they're staying silent. They're just not. They're not speaking out right now. They're going to let their votes count at the voting box. But the problem is that we have to show up in full force. If we do not show up in full force, we will lose the election. And I mean everywhere. We have to show up in full force everywhere. We have to show up. We have to vote. We have to make sure that we eliminate this leftist ideology. I just looked up 5 top articles that are on Google. 5 top articles on Google. Those 5 top articles that are negative towards the husband and wife that actually were there are all written by foreign journalists. They work for U.S. journalist deal, but they're foreign born. All 5 of them. I mean, just, Max, I want people to start looking at facts. I want them to start looking at what's really happening. These are people that have no history in our country. They have no history. They come here, take advantage of scholarships. They take advantage of our education system. They take advantage of the people here, get free things, go on to get jobs in environments here, and then they try to infiltrate what we are as the American people, erode who we are as the American people, affect our ethos, destroy who we are as a country, weaken us so that on the global battleground, they can actually compete against us. And no more clear is it than it is in our U.S. military, where you cannot yell at someone at basic training, that you have 4 or 5 different chances that if you fail basic training, you can actually go back and take it all over again. They are eroding everything about our society from the inside out. And frankly, our immigration system used to be based on civics. You used to have to take a class in order to become a citizen, right? And in that class, you would learn about the history of America. You would learn about things like the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. You used to have to take a test that told you about those things. Then I start seeing some of the things that they're actually putting in front of people. You don't even have to speak English. English is not even a prerequisite to get a driver's license. No assimilation required. But if you go to any of the 190 or 204, depending on nations around the world, you have to actually assimilate to that culture. You can't walk into the Middle East and say, I think I'm going to crack open a beer on the street in the middle of Ramadan. You can't do it. But yet in our country, you don't have to assimilate. You don't have to respect the culture. You don't have to respect the people. You can do whatever you want. You can write articles about anything you want. You can be inflammatory. Right? You can shut out the people that actually broke their backs to build the communities that they live in. It doesn't make sense to me. None of it makes sense to me. And I feel like we're letting it happen. We're letting it happen.
I want to end today's episode by reading a couple paragraphs of how the Washington Post yesterday presented this story that we've talked about. Just to recap, angry Black Lives Matter mob tears down wrought iron gate, destroys public property, threatens to kill the homeowner, burn down his house, kill his dog, right? Steal the house and live in it once he's dead, right? Racking the slide of a gun and reloading it, saying this is for you. All of that. This is how the Washington Post described the story. On Sunday afternoon, a group of protesters hoping to draw attention to issues of racial inequality marched through an upper-income neighborhood in St. Louis on their way to the mayor's house. As they walked along a nearby street, 2 homeowners emerged from a large, expensive-looking house to confront the group associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. The man in a pink polo shirt tucked into pressed khaki pants held an AR-15-style rifle. His wife was more casually dressed and held a pistol. As marchers passed, they stood outside their restored 1909 mansion in defense of their house, estimated by Zillow to be worth nearly $1.7 million. This sight of well-dressed homeowners emerged from an expensive house with firearms to stave off a peaceful protest appeared to strike many observers as incongruous. There are a slew of expectations about gun owners in America, royal hunters, suburban enthusiasts, but a pink-shirted lawyer emerging from a recreated Renaissance palazzo holding a gun isn't among them. That's how they described what we've spent the last hour talking about. That this was a peaceful protest just walking through a neighborhood, and these people came out to confront them. Ignoring the fact that these people were sitting down for dinner, heard their gated community having the gate ripped off the hinges, bent in half, hundreds of people storming in, and if they didn't grab the guns, their house probably would have been burned down, because that's what they were threatening to do. It is unbelievable that this fake news is allowed to be spread like that. To spread these lies, to gin up racial angst and to gin up these protesters. That is the crime in this. Not a homeowner defending his house. The coverage, the one-sided coverage, the lies being pushed by the media, all for clicks. They're trying to stir up a race war, Joe, so they can get more clicks on their website. It is unacceptable in a democratic society. It is unacceptable in our republic for the media to gin up a race war to get more clicks on their blog posts, because that's what we're seeing here. This is panic porn, just like we talked about with the COVID-19. It's panic porn. They live and die on internet traffic, and they will say anything, they'll write anything to get people over there. And in the process, they're literally brainwashing people. It's so depressing, but we have to keep pushing back on it, which every time we see stuff like that, we are going to bring it up. We are going to push back on it, because if left unopposed, this will destroy the country. Forget about the actual violence. If the media, supposedly the fourth branch of government, is allowed to spread these lies for their own enrichment, that will destroy the country. So we have to push back on it. Any final words, Joe?
Prepare and have courage, right? And pray. Like we can't allow them to take God out of our environment. We can't allow them to take God out of what we do in our lives. And frankly, if we don't do that, if we don't at least turn to God and ask for some sort of guidance, we're likely to get so far off the beaten trail that we do things for ourselves and we don't do things for the greater good of our society and our community. So stick together. And I think that as a whole, if we actually stick together, I know that Josh, who's our producer, he's having meetings with his neighborhood. They're actually organizing that if something bad happens in the neighborhood, everyone go to one house. And we're doing it in our neighborhood. So make sure you get to know your neighbors. If you don't know your neighbors, get to know them, right? Because you're gonna need to depend on people around you in order to create some success for getting through this holistically. And then vote. Last thing is vote.
Yeah.
Vote for Trump. Vote red. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. We can worry about getting. You can't vote for Democrats. You can't vote for any Democrats. There can be no Democrat that you actually vote for, because they can't be trusted. They are the party of pedophiles, rapists, and. Oh
no, we can't get into that. Come on, we're gonna get kicked off of every social media platform. We can't
for
do
what?
That.
Telling the truth.
The best comment I think of the day. There were a lot of good ones, but came in at the end from Rebecca. She's saying that after Washington Post was ragging on his pink shirt, she's saying, "I'd come out in a leather catsuit and a whip. Wonder what they would say about that, eh?" I think that's one of the best comments of the day. Keep commenting. We do read them in real time. Can't get to all of them, but we do read them, and a lot of them are very witty and very funny. So that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Remember that you can download the podcast on Apple Podcasts if you have an iPhone, as well as the Google Play Store if you have an Android. You can also find us on the Podbean app, as well as conservative-daily.com/podcast. Please do subscribe to the audio version, even if you watch it here on YouTube or our Facebook live streams. Make sure you download it too, because that helps us with the overall numbers. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country isn't over, but the only way we win is if we all stand together.